Hello and welcome to 3-Inning Fan, the podcast with me, Kelley Franco. What is your first week of the season style? Are you a panicker or are you one of those smug, it's early, don't overreact kind of types? I go back and forth myself. But we have a tremendous show coming up for you today. We're going to cover the Mets and the Yankees and the Torpedoes and what I think that the new frontiers are not only in bats but in the game as a whole. Off-the-field developments have far surpassed just the use of analytics and have busted into AI. We'll also tour MLB so you know what's happening around the league because 3-Inning Fan listeners are always well-informed and never make a baseball faux pas. We will talk the powerful NL West, how the Padres can be undefeated and still be in second place, and the flurry of extensions happening all over baseball. And if you're a panicker, we'll tell you which teams are worth panicking over. And then we'll talk about the GQ spread for baseball's most famous and young power couple. And we do it all in about 20 minutes because you don't have all day. Let's get on it. We're going to start with the Mets. The Mets are playing their home opener today at Citi Field against Toronto. Not exactly a legendary matchup, but hey, a home opener is a home opener. The Mets are off to a 3-3 start. Let's open with a new segment called Guess Who Still Matters? You know who still matters? Pete Alonso still matters. This winter was all Juan Soto all the time. And when Pete finally signed with the Mets, it seemed like he was going to be the icing on the cake. Well, guess what? So far this season, Pete hasn't been the icing on the cake. He's been the actual cake. He hit a 3-run homer against the Marlins on Wednesday night that sparked a come-from-behind win. And 2 days earlier, he hit a grand slam against the Marlins in a blowout win. Today, Pete will greet that hometown crowd at Citi Field, and they will go berserk for him. Homegrown hero. And there will probably also be quite a greeting for Juan Soto. Let's not just talk about what happens if Alonso does really well this year and opts out at the end of the season. It's too early for that. Okay, back to this season. The Mets offense has been quiet, but I think it's starting to wake up, led by Alonso. Aside from that whopper of an inning against the Marlins last Monday when they scored 7 runs in 1 inning, their offensive production has been lackluster. Lindor is off to his customary slow start. Soto and Nimmo have been decent, but Soto has had a few chances to play hero, and he hasn't come through. The offense is going to come around, of course, but just because it was so touted, you can't help but kind of be tapping your foot, waiting for it to explode. I do think the comeback win against the Marlins on Wednesday night could be a sign of good things to come. You know who's having a sophomore slump? Mark Vientos. He's having a rough start. He didn't run hard in Tuesday's game and missed an opportunity to reach first safely when the play was bobbled. He apologized, but then he made a few glaring fielding errors in Wednesday night's game. You know who can't get consistent? Brett Baty, the 2019 first-round pick. He had such a nice spring training, but he's 1-14 so far this season. Once Jeff McNeil returns from his oblique strain, for which we don't have a firm timeline, either Baty or Acuna will be demoted to Triple-A Syracuse. So far, my money's on Baty, unless he can turn it around. You know who continues to please? Luis Torrens, the backup catcher turned starting catcher, given Francisco Alvarez's injury. In Wednesday's comeback win, with the game tied in the 8th, Torrens tagged out Xavier Edwards on a play at the plate. And then he promptly threw out Griffin Conine stealing and threw the dart from his knees. Torrens' defense in that game was just as important as Alonso's 3-run homer. Last year, the Mets had huge issues shutting down the running game at the beginning of the season. And then when Alvarez got hurt and Torrens took the reins, he shut down the running game immediately. And he's picking up right where he left off. And it's not just defensively that Torrens is shining. He's had a home run, and he has 5 hits and 16 at bats. So he's filling in nicely. And how did they get him again? From the Yankees for some cash and a bag of balls. Great acquisition. My listeners know that I have been concerned about the Mets' starting rotation. I feel it is their Achilles heel. We had some good news and some bad news on that front this week. The bad news is that Mania suffered a setback in his rehab from a right oblique strain. He's been shut down from throwing for 2 weeks, and then they have to start building him up again. The most optimistic timeline for his return is late May, but honestly, I always feel like when we get these timelines, it's like when the contractor says your kitchen will be done in late May. Your kitchen so totally won't be done in late May. The good news is that Kodai Senga had a good start on Tuesday night against the Marlins. It was his first of the season, and yes, he took the loss, but he pitched 5 innings, gave up 3 hits and 4 runs, but only 2 of the runs were earned. He had 8 strikeouts, and maybe I set the bar too low, but he didn't limp off the mound, okay? So, with Mania down, so much of this rotation hinges on Senga, and I considered this to be a solid first outing. So if you're listening to this on your way to Citi Field, cheer hard and good luck against the Blue Jays because they are actually in first place in the AL East with a 5-2 record. And speaking of the AL East, let's talk about the Yankees. The Yankees got off to a great start this season. Then they let it slip for a couple of games against the D-backs, but salvaged last night's game when Carlos Carrasco, 38 years old, got the win in limiting Arizona to 3 runs and 5 hits over 5 1/3 innings. But boy, the Yankees' home run barrage is barraging. They have 22 as a team, which is an MLB record for only 6 games in. Judge has 5 homers. Chisholm and Volpe each have 4. Let's talk about Volpe. Anthony Volpe is showing some firepower so far this season. God, I love this kid. I want him so badly. I want him so badly to be a star, and I think it's because of his story. He grew up locally, a Yankee fan, idolized Derek Jeter, and then he actually becomes the shortstop for the Yankees. Through the Yankees' first 5 games this season, Volpe has had 4 hits, and they were all home runs. Last year, his 4th home run didn't come until his 36th game, and he had a total of 12 all of last year. Volpe was amazing in the playoffs last year. I was actually at the lone World Series win where he hit the grand slam, and it was truly a moment. I'll never forget it. And the hope was that his offense would continue into this season. What's interesting to me is the display of power. He's using the Torpedo bat. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm wondering if we've yet to see the full evolution of this young player. Because his rookie year in 2023 was a Gold Glove defensive year, low batting average, but he hit 21 homers. Last year, we started to see him be a bit more consistent in the batter's box, and then he aced the postseason. And so far this year, we're seeing power. We just don't know what we have in him yet, but I love watching him grow. Later in the program, we will talk about all of the extensions going on around MLB, and you have to wonder if Volpe will be one of them at some point, although extensions to young players aren't really the Yankees' style. Coming up, the Yankees go to Pittsburgh for the weekend for a 3-game series, and they don't have to face Paul Skeens. So let's hope they can improve their record. And when you go to Pittsburgh for 3 games and you're not facing Skeens, anything less than a sweep is a loss. Oh, and Yankee closer Devin Williams will be back from paternity leave today, and reliever Ian Hamilton is scheduled to come back after a virus. So Adam Ottavino, who was a Yankee for approximately 8 seconds, has just been DFA'd. Let's talk about the explosion last week in baseball. And of course, it was the detonation of the Torpedo bats the Yankees, among others, were using. As you know by now, these bats are legal in that they are within the length and weight specifications of the MLB rules, but they differ in how they distribute that weight. They were designed for players who tended to make contact slightly lower on the bat. The designers of the Torpedo bat moved the fat part of the bat a little lower, so the hitter who makes contact a little lower could make that contact with the sweet spot on the bat. Picture the bat like a tube of toothpaste with the cap on. If you squeezed it toward the top, it kind of makes the middle of the tube of toothpaste a little chubbier. So, as we said as kids, big whoop. These bats have actually been around for some time, and nobody made a big deal about them. Several other teams have been using them or had access to them. The Red Sox used them in spring training. The Cubs and the Twins use them. A Blue Jay, a Ray uses them. Francisco Lindor has used them, and so on. So they're not new. But maybe because some of the Yankees were using torpedo bats when they scored approximately 4,000 runs against the Brewers last weekend, they gained some notoriety. I think also, though, in that weekend series, it was notable that the Brewers' pitching has been decimated, and that probably had something to do with the 4,000 runs. So the Yankees have come down to earth a little bit in their run scoring since then. Not last night. They scored a lot of runs. But time will tell what these torpedo bats do. We can't judge it by just 6 games into the season. So, just like that, though, nonetheless, it's a new dawn for bats. The next frontier of baseball wasn't some hidden secret. It was the bat. It was hiding in plain sight. So there have been some changes in bats in recent years, like moving from ash to maple, but not a whole lot else. But I foresee an arms race to see who can get the most out of their bats right now. Bats are already customized to a certain degree, but I envision more and more of that based on the biomechanics of every single player. What are biomechanics? Biomechanics are the study of human movement. In my business as an attorney, if somebody claims an injury, say they fell over a railing and claim it was because the railing was too low, the plaintiff or the defense might retain a biomechanical expert to reconstruct the fall. That expert measures the build of the person, the height of the person, the weight of the person, his proportions, and takes this data and adds in other forces like motion, energy, torque. I just threw in torque because it makes me sound so smart. I don't really know what torque is. But anyway, so they look at all those things and then they determine how the accident actually happened. So how do I envision biomechanics in terms of applying it to bat construction? This is where AI is going to come in. These are just my ideas here. But I see biomechanical experts measuring the data on the players' individual bodies, plus analyzing their stance, how they hold the bat, how they swing, where they make contact with the ball, whether they tend to get jammed up, and those kind of things. And then also look at the pitcher. Is it a fastball pitcher? Is it a curveball pitcher? What's his spin rate? Then these MIT geniuses will put that data into an AI blender and serve up tailored bats that are within the MLB regulations that will maximize the results the player wants to achieve. Some of this is already being done to a certain degree, but I think it's about to explode. And of course, not every player wants to achieve the same thing. Some are contact hitters and some are power hitters. Think Luis Ariz versus Aaron Judge. But folks, I think this is the future. The genesis of this line of thought came to me when my Mets friend Jim from the health food store practically tackled me on the street this week, asking me about the torpedo bats. So thanks for the idea, Jim from the health food store. Must be all that ginkgo biloba you take. So get the right bat. And so long, bat boys and bat girls. You've been laid off and replaced by an astrophysicist. I know you're only 8, but it's time you learned that life was hard. Note that in the past few years, we have referred to much of these off-the-field impacts as analytics. But these new bats, for example, are not analytics. They're engineering and biomechanics and physics and, yep, artificial intelligence. It used to be that you sounded old if you didn't know what analytics were. Now you'll sound old if you think off-the-field baseball stops at analytics. So, yes, my prediction of bespoke AI engineered bats will be another way in which baseball moves off the field and into the lab. So I'll pause for a second while we shake our heads in sad resignation. For those of you just on audio, let the record reflect I've just paused and shaken my head in sad resignation. And then, you know what I think is the next huge frontier? Well, I think it's still going on, but I want to bring it to light. Health. If teams or the medical professionals they hire can figure out how to keep players off the IL, that will be another huge advantage they have, especially if a doctor can figure out how to keep a pitcher's elbow healthy and avoid Tommy John surgery. It's practically a rite of passage these days. This is going to be one rich doctor. Baseball is a game of margins, and the little things that create a 1% to 2% advantage are what separates the winners from the losers. Team needs to keep innovating, and heaven help the club that gets left behind. Let's continue our tour around MLB and go to the NL West. The Dodgers. No, they won't go 162-0, but it sure feels like it. And their hot start is a huge help. So far, they haven't lost a game, and they're 8-0. They're so crazy good, it's actually kind of boring because there's no suspense involved. But what's not boring? Roki Sasaki. He was one of the most anticipated signings of the offseason, aside from Juan Soto, and he signed with the Dodgers because Dodgers. And Sasaki has tremendous potential, but he's still young, and he's in his formative years at 23 years old. So what's the problem? He's not throwing strikes. He's walking guys. He's going to full counts, and he's being bailed out by the Dodgers' tremendous offense. In the second game of their series against the Cubs in Tokyo, he lasted only 3 innings. In his Dodger Stadium debut against the Tigers, he didn't even last 2 innings. It took him 62 pitches to record 5 outs. His ERA is a 5.79 in a total of 4.2 innings pitched this season. Sasaki's next start will be Saturday against the Phillies and Aaron Nola. We'll be watching. But the good thing for Sasaki is that the Dodgers don't need him to be good right away. Part of their sales pitch to him was that they have so many stars and such great pitching that Sasaki can take the time to adjust to MLB and learn on the job. And by the way, the same thing goes for Ohtani in terms of returning to pitching. He has started to throw. There's no clear timeline for his return to pitching, and the Dodgers aren't rushing him. They don't need to because Dodgers. Well, the Dodgers aren't the only undefeated team in MLB. The Padres are 7-0. They're undefeated and in second place, which stinks for them. Welcome to division play with the Dodgers. You're undefeated and you still lost. But the Padres' strong start is good for the NL West. You don't want it to be a runaway division. And don't miss out on the Diamondbacks or the Giants. It's easy to see 3 playoff teams coming out of that division. And while we're on the Padres, let's talk about how MLB is in an extension frenzy. And the Padres made a major extension this past week. They extended Jackson Merrill, who is 3 years old. Okay, not really. He's 21 years old, but it seems like he's just a baby. And the Padres extended him on a $135 million deal to begin next year and run through 2034, at which point half of my viewership will be dead. Merrill was on the team as a rookie last year. He had an 826 OPS, and he finished second to Paul Skeens in the NL Rookie of the Year voting. So how does his contract rate? If Merrill turns out to be as good as he's projected to be, it's big-time club friendly. And if not, he'll be just fine. Of course, who's not just fine with $135 million? He said he wanted to take less so the team could build around him and have the funds to do so. The players' union and the agents don't like hearing that because the contract still sets a comp for other players. The Padres have a good core now. Aside from Merrill, they have Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., and Xander Bogaerts. Those last three are all signed through 2033. Yeah, not all those signings are going to age well, but the Padres have a good setup for now and the near future. Extension frenzy came to Boston, too. Let's talk about the Red Sox. The Red Sox are in commitment mode, and heaven knows their fans deserve it after the way they've been treated in the past few years. A couple weeks back, I talked about how they had that great offseason. They traded for Garrett Crochet, and how they had three amazing prospects on the rise: Christian Campbell, Roman Anthony, and Marcelo Mayer. Well, this past week, they extended Garrett Crochet with a 6-year, $170 million deal, and then announced an 8-year deal with second baseman Christian Campbell, one of those youngsters. It is $60 million guaranteed, but with club options and escalators, it could bring it over $100 million. I think the Campbell deal, like the Merrill deal, is extremely team-friendly if Campbell turns out to be as good as he looks now. Of course, he's been a major leaguer for approximately 5 minutes, so it's just hard to know. Mamas, teach your boys to play baseball. And teach your daughters to be astrophysicists who can design bespoke baseball bats. Sewing up Crochet and Campbell sets up Boston to look good for a few years to come. If you're curious, those two other top prospects, Roman Anthony and Marcelo Mayer, they started the season in AAA, but you'll probably see them at Fenway at some point this year. The future looks bright in Boston, she says with a strained note to her voice. On the lighter side, you know how the NFL has Taylor and Travis? Well, I hope you know about MLB's It couple. Pirates phenom pitcher and last year's Rookie of the Year, Paul Skeens, and LSU gymnast Olivia, or Livy, Dunn. If you don't, GQ just did a story on them, which is kind of completely adorable. They're both 22, enormously talented, and Livy has a whopping 5.3 million followers on Instagram. She's a master not only of gymnastics, but of social media. Go check out the GQ story. It's online, and it's worth it for the photos alone, because who doesn't want to see ridiculously gorgeous people wearing expensive clothes? And if you are a guy listening to this, go ahead and pretend you're not interested, but I know you are. Here's a new segment called We Don't Panic, but We're Secretly Glad We're Not Fans of These Teams. The Atlanta Braves are 0-7, and their one big offseason acquisition, Jurickson Profar, was suspended for using a banned substance. He's out for 80 games plus the postseason. If I were his teammate, I would be pretty upset about that. Plus, they lost their starter, Reynaldo Lopez, who needs arthroscopic surgery on his right shoulder. He's probably gone for most of the season. And the AL Central so far, 4 teams are playing .333 ball, and 1 team is playing .286 ball. The teams at .333 are the White Sox, the Guardians, the Tigers, and the Royals. The Twins are in last place at .286. Ladies and gentlemen, the AL Central. All right, enough of that. Let's close it up with what's good to eat while watching the ball game. I literally and figuratively spiced up my food segment this week because my friend and loyal listener Lou told me that my salmon from the last show was boring. Lou, thanks a lot. Okay, Lou, dig this. So this week, while we were watching meaningful baseball, hooray, I made roasted chicken thighs with hot honey and lime. It's a Valerie Lomas recipe from the New York Times. If you want to go look it up, it's the second time I've made this recipe because it's delicious and easy. This is what we call in our house a make again, and it's the highest compliment I can give a recipe. These chicken thighs are so easy to put together. You toss them in salt, pepper, garlic, and onion powders, roast them for 20 minutes at 450, then take them out and brush them with a melted butter and hot sauce blend. I like Frank's Red Hot. Roast them for another 15 minutes, take them out, and toss them with even more melted butter and Frank's Red Hot, this time mixed with some honey, lime zest, and then I give it a generous squeeze of lime juice. I serve these babies with roasted sweet potatoes and a huge green salad. And don't forget to bathe those sweet potatoes in butter, salt, and pepper. Just like that, you have a delicious, spicy, sweet, tangy dinner that is honestly better than anything you get at a restaurant. Why? Well, because it's scrumptious, you made it yourself, and you didn't spend $150, and you get to eat it while hunched over the coffee table and watching the ball game like real Americans. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.